The NBA is a pressure cooker. It's a collision of massive egos, hyper-competitiveness, and hundreds of millions of dollars. Sometimes that pressure doesn't just forge diamonds, it causes a total structural collapse. For some of the greatest players to ever lace them up, the man wearing the same jersey wasn't an ally, he was the enemy. From legendary dynasties that imploded over a lack of respect to stars who brought actual firearms into the workplace over a card game, the history of the league is littered with teammates who didn't just dislike each other, they lived in a state of war.
So Jokic came back with even more brutality.
And Jokic,
and coaches are in the middle of it.
That was straight disrespect.
And he never put the ball back down.
Thompson locking up. Oh my goodness.
Gets thrown to the floor.
Today we're going beyond the box scores. We're looking at the psychological warfare, the financial jealousies, and the physical altercations that defined eras. We'll explore why Michael Jordan felt the need to break his teammates before he could lead them. We'll dissect the most famous divorce in sports history between Shaq and Kobe, and we'll see how a single betrayal in a locker room can erase a decade of friendship. Because in the NBA, the toughest opponent you'll ever face might just be sitting right next to you on the bench. In the early 1990s, the Charlotte Hornets were the coolest team in basketball. They had the starter jackets everyone wanted, a vibrant home court, and most importantly, two of the most dominant young forwards in the world, Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning. On paper, they were the successor to the Showtime Lakers, a duo built to rule the East for a decade. But in the NBA, chemistry is a fragile thing, and nothing shatters it faster than a paycheck. In 1993, the Hornets made history by signing Larry Johnson to a 12-year, $84 million contract. At the time, it was the richest deal in the history of pro sports. For LJ, it was a reward for his Rookie of the Year campaign and his massive marketing appeal. But for Alonzo Mourning, it was a slap in the face. Zoe was the defensive anchor. He was the one protecting the rim while LJ got the headlines. The salary cap in the 90s wasn't what it is today. Mourning knew that if the Hornets gave the whole pie to Johnson, there wouldn't be enough left to feed him. The jealousy wasn't just about the bank account, it was about the alpha. Johnson arrived in Charlotte first. He felt it was his city. Mourning, a defensive warrior with a legendary temper, wasn't built to be anyone's number two. The tension became toxic. Practice sessions turned into silent treatments. By 1995, the Hornets realized the situation was unsalvageable. Mourning turned down a $70 million extension, essentially forcing a trade to Miami. A year later, Johnson was shipped off to New York. The Teal dynasty was over before it even started. The world finally saw the extent of their hatred during the 1998 playoffs. This wasn't just a basketball scuffle. It was years of resentment over money, respect, and status finally boiling over. It remains one of the most iconic fights in NBA history, not because of the punches thrown, but because it represented the death of a partnership that could have changed the league. When asked about the fight years later, Mourning simply said, "We just didn't like each other." It was that simple. But as we'll see, sometimes the hatred isn't about money. Sometimes it's about a veteran trying to break a rookie's spirit. That there is a common saying in sports, winning cures everything. But for Michael Jordan, winning was merely the price of entry. To MJ, his teammates weren't just colleagues, they were tools to be sharpened. And if you weren't strong enough to handle the grind, he would break you himself. This wasn't team building in the modern sense. This was psychological warfare. Take the case of Steve Kerr. In 1995, during a high-intensity scrimmage, Jordan was relentless. He was trash-talking, fouling, and pushing Kerr to his limit. Phil Jackson was calling tic-tac fouls to protect the smaller guard, which only infuriated Jordan more. Finally, Kerr snapped. He hit Jordan in the chest. Jordan responded with a punch straight to Kerr's eye. Most teams would crumble after their superstar punches a role player, but for Jordan, this was a test. He later said he needed to know if Kerr could stand up to the pressure of the Knicks or the Pacers in the playoffs. If Kerr couldn't handle Michael, how could he handle Reggie Miller? Kerr earned Jordan's respect that day, and 2 years later, it was Kerr who hit the shot to win the 1997 title. But Jordan's tough love had a dark side, and nowhere was that more evident than in the tragedy of Kwame Brown. In 2001, Jordan, then the president of the Wizards, selected Kwame Brown as the first ever high schooler to go #1 overall. When Jordan decided to come out of retirement to play alongside the rookie, the dynamic changed from mentor to tormentor. Jordan didn't see a teenager who needed guidance. He saw a soft target. He reportedly berated Brown in front of the team, calling him bust and using slurs that would never fly in today's NBA. He mocked his skill, his hands, and his heart. Unlike Steve Kerr, Kwame Brown didn't swing back. He withered. His confidence, already fragile, was incinerated by the greatest player to ever live. The 35 to 54-year-olds watching this today likely remember the debate. Was Kwame just a bust, or did Michael Jordan ruin him? Brown spent his career under the shadow of that hatred, once remarking that Michael never brought him to tears, but admitting the scars were deep. It shows the terrifying reality of the Jordan era. His fire could light the way to a championship, or it could burn your entire career to the ground. But if you think Jordan was demanding, he was nothing compared to the Cold War brewing in the City of Angels. Because while Michael wanted to win at any cost, the next duo we're discussing couldn't even agree on what winning looked like. In the history of Hollywood, there have been many legendary duos, but none reached the heights or hit the rock bottom of Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. It was the perfect basketball marriage. The most dominant physical force the game had ever seen, paired with a young, clinical assassin with a psychopathic work ethic. Together, they delivered a three-peat, 3 consecutive championships from 2000 to 2002. They were untouchable, but while the world saw a dynasty, the locker room saw a Cold War. The hatred between Shaq and Kobe wasn't just about basketball, it was a fundamental clash of philosophies. Kobe Bryant was a purist. He lived for the Mamba mentality before it had a name. He showed up at 4 a.m. and expected everyone else to do the same. Then there was Shaq. Shaq loved being a superstar. He loved movies, rap albums, and police training. He famously delayed his toe surgery until the start of the season, saying, "I got hurt on company time, so I'll recover on company time." To Kobe, that wasn't just lazy, it was an insult to the game. By 2003, the tension had reached a breaking point. During a pickup game, Shaq reportedly slapped Kobe across the face after a round of trash talk. Their teammates had to separate them like two heavyweights in a ring, but the real damage happened in the media. When Kobe faced a trial in Colorado that threatened to end his career, the rift turned personal. Kobe felt Shaq hadn't reached out to support him. In an interview with Jim Gray, Kobe went nuclear. He called Shaq fat and lazy and claimed that the man selling donuts at 7-Eleven had more pride in his job than O'Neal did. Shaq fired back, telling reporters that Kobe should be worried about his own problems. The Lakers' locker room was no longer a team. It was a courtroom where everyone was forced to take a side. The 2004 Finals loss to the Pistons was the final nail in the coffin. The talent was there, but the chemistry was incinerated. Phil Jackson, the Zen master who had managed Michael Jordan, finally admitted he couldn't control this. He called Kobe uncoachable in his book and left. Shaq was traded to Miami shortly after. The tragedy of Shaq and Kobe isn't that they failed, it's that they won, and it still wasn't enough. For our audience who grew up watching these two, the question remains the ultimate what if? If they had put their egos aside for just 5 more years, would they have surpassed Jordan's 6 rings? They eventually found peace in their later years, but the scar they left on the Lakers' legacy is permanent. It's a reminder that even the greatest empire on earth can be toppled from within. But while Shaq and Kobe fought with words and headlines, our next story involves a confrontation that went beyond the media and into the world of ballistics. In the mid-2000s, Gilbert Arenas was the NBA's ultimate wild card. He was a self-made superstar who slept on the gym floor and took shots from the logo before it was a trend. But there was a fine line between his quirky personality and a dangerous lack of boundaries. In December 2009, that line didn't just blur, it vanished. It started on a team charter flight back from Phoenix. In the back of the plane, a high-stakes card game called Bourrée was in progress. Bourrée is a locker room staple, a game of speed and nerve where thousands of dollars can change hands in a single flight. Javaris Crittenton, a young guard trying to find his place in the league, was having a terrible night. He had lost over $1,000 to teammate JaVale McGee. Arenas, who wasn't even playing in the hand, began to chirping from the sidelines, mocking Crittenton, calling him a loser, and escalating the tension for his own amusement. Crittenton, already on edge, snapped. He told Arenas to shut up. Arenas laughed it off, telling the young guard he'd burn his car with him in it. Crittenton's response chilled the entire plane. "I'll shoot you in your bum knee." For most people, that's where the story ends. A heated exchange fueled by gambling and ego, but Gilbert Arenas lived in a different reality. He didn't see a threat, he saw a challenge. 2 days later, on December 21st, Arenas decided to call the bluff. Arenas arrived at the Verizon Center with 4 handguns. He walked into the locker room, placed them on a chair next to Crittenton's locker, and left a note. It was a macabre invitation that simply said, "Pick one." When Crittenton walked in, he didn't see a joke. He saw a veteran teammate mocking his life. According to witnesses, Crittenton didn't touch Gilbert's guns. Instead, he reached into his own bag, pulled out a silver handgun, loaded a round into the chamber, and pointed it directly at Arenas' head. The room went dead silent. This wasn't a movie set. This was an NBA locker room on a Monday morning. Teammates like Karen Butler, who grew up in the toughest neighborhoods of Racine, Wisconsin, later wrote in his autobiography that he had seen a lot of things, but he never thought he'd see a standoff in the workplace. Butler reportedly shouted at the other players to get the hell out as he tried to de-escalate 2 men who were seconds away from pulling a trigger over a card game. The fallout didn't just affect the Wizards, it scarred the entire league. Commissioner David Stern was legendary for his iron fist when it came to the NBA's image. He suspended both players indefinitely without pay. Arenas, who had recently signed a $111 million contract, became a pariah overnight. He would never be Agent Zero again. As for Crittenton, his life spiraled. He was out of the league months later, and eventually his path led to a voluntary manslaughter charge in an unrelated shooting, resulting in a 23-year prison sentence. For the mature fans who remember this era, it remains the ultimate cautionary tale. It showed that when the ego of a superstar is unchecked and the brotherhood of the locker room fails, the game of basketball is no longer a game. It becomes a matter of life and death. While some beefs are born from violence or money, the most painful ones are born from a breach of brotherhood. In 2008, the Boston Celtics' Big Three, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen, restored the glory of the NBA's most storied franchise. Under Coach Doc Rivers, they didn't just play together, they were a cult of Ubuntu. It was a South African philosophy meaning, I am because we are. Total togetherness, total sacrifice. But Ubuntu is a heavy burden to carry, and even a brotherhood built on a championship can turn into a house of cards when the hierarchy begins to shift. The cracks began with the rise of Rajon Rondo. By 2010, Rondo wasn't just a role player anymore. He was a brilliant but incredibly stubborn all-star point guard who wanted to take the reins from the veterans. Ray Allen, the perfectionist, the gentleman of the group who ran miles through screens every night, felt Rondo's growing ego was becoming toxic. The tension wasn't just passive-aggressive, it was physical. Sources inside the Celtics locker room later revealed that the animosity got so bad, the team actually forced them to put on boxing gloves. They held a sanctioned bout at the practice facility just so the two could vent their frustration. According to teammates, Rondo was swinging with conviction, trying to knock Allen's head off, while Ray was calmly jabbing, trying to maintain his composure. But the gloves didn't solve anything. Rondo allegedly stopped passing Allen the ball in crucial moments. Allen felt the organization was siding with the young guard. Then came the ultimate sin in the summer of 2012. Ray Allen did the unthinkable. He turned down a larger contract from Boston to sign a smaller deal with their arch rivals, the Miami Heat. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to remember the context. The Heat were the enemy. They were the team that had just eliminated the Celtics in a brutal 7-game series. LeBron James was the rival that Garnett and Pierce had spent years trying to bully out of the playoffs. Kevin Garnett, this wasn't just a free agency move, it was a defection. It was a soldier leaving the trench to join the army that had just fired on his brothers. The silence that followed was deafening. Kevin Garnett, the emotional heartbeat of that era, famously deleted Ray Allen's phone number and refused to speak to him for nearly a decade. When the 2008 team organized a 10-year reunion vacation, the message was clear. Everyone was invited except Ray. For the fans who grew up with this team, it was a slow-motion tragedy. It showed that the same intensity that wins championships can also be the thing that prevents forgiveness. In Garnett's world, you were either with the Celtics or you were against them. There was no middle ground. And while time eventually heals some wounds, the Ubuntu Celtics remain a reminder that in the NBA, loyalty is the most expensive currency there is. And once it's spent, you can never get it back. We look at these players and we see legends. We see the highlights and the rings. things, but the truth is, the locker room is a human place. It is a place where young men are thrust into a world of unimaginable pressure and asked to remain perfect teammates while fighting for their own survival, their own money, and their own legacy. Some duos like Shaq and Kobe find a way to reconcile before it's too late. Others like Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning, or Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton, remain forever linked by the moments where it all fell apart. The hatred we've explored today isn't just a sideshow to the sport, it is the sport. It's the friction that creates the fire. Because you can't have The Last Dance without a tyrant. You can't have Lob City without a breakdown. And you can't have the glory of a championship without the risk of it all burning down. So the next time you see a team celebrate a title, look closely at the faces in the huddle. Because behind the smiles, the next great rivalry might already be simmering. Who do you think was the most justified in their hatred? And which duo do you wish had stayed together? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into NBA history. Thanks for watching.